So let's start. What is your name?
Steve with a V, Trefanides,
Okay. Where were you born?
New Bedford, Mass, 1926. That makes me almost 90.
Do you have any siblings?
I mean, any brothers or sisters? Yes, I have a brother who's alive, and he's 5 years younger than me, and he lives down here near the Cape.
Mm-hmm. What were your parents like?
Well, my mother was very small, she was about 5'2", but she made up for it with a generous volume in her speech. Yeah. She was 19 or 18 when she met my father, and it was a kind of, as I got the story, it was a story about a marriage of two people who never met. And I do have a photograph of them on their honeymoon sitting at a cafe in Europe somewhere. And so they did meet, and they came here, and he was a restaurant, owned a restaurant, small restaurant in New Bedford, called, what was it called? I have to come back to that later.
That's all right.
Very ordinary name. Anyway, my mother did learn English in a broken English, of course.
Mm-hmm.
My father died when I was 7 years old, so I hardly knew him at all, because being a restaurant man, you spent most of your life in the restaurant, getting ready early in the morning, staying late at night. So I didn't know him at all. He died in New Bedford in the hospital there. There's pictures of me talking to him. I'm standing in the street and he's up in a window. And otherwise I couldn't tell you anything, even what he looked like.
Where was your mother from?
She's from Greece. She's from Thessaloniki, and it's northern Greece. I later visited my grandmother there, and my aunt there, and an uncle, and I think they've all passed. So I went there alone. My brother was supposed to meet me, but he got held up somewhere, so I went on alone. It was a wonderful trip. Couldn't speak a word of Greek. They couldn't speak a word of anything, but we understood very easily. That was a great experience. So, but that was after I had been a soldier. I was. So getting back to being a private in the Army Air Corps, I got my training in Camp Gordon, Georgia, and then traveled across the country to California, where I got on a troop ship with a lot of troops. They were called Liberty ships, and they're famous because they had round bottoms. So anybody like me who gets seasick very easily was seasick all the time. The boat, round bottom. And we landed in after an overnight stop at Hawaii. We went on into the Pacific Ocean to about where the Philippine Islands were.
Mhm.
And I think we stopped in the Philippine Islands briefly before we went on to Leyte, Leyte,
Mhm.
a famous battle, many battles of Leyte. When I arrived there, by the way, on the way over, we got the great news that Germany had
Surrendered.
surrendered. And everybody on the ship, of course, were very excited because we all felt we were doomed to die anyway. And now we knew we weren't going to, that wasn't going to happen. So a lot of them threw their gas mask overboard. And I was one of them.
Mhm.
But, so we got to Leyte. I stayed there a short time and then moved on to Cebu Island,
Mhm.
which is, I don't know how close it is, but it's pretty close to the Philippines. And I spent, I don't know how long, I think pretty close to a year there.
Mhm.
The island was, is now deserted practically of all the United States soldiers, and we were the recruit to take over from them. And now there was nothing to take over because the war was over.
Mhm.
But there were certain Japanese soldiers there which we enlisted to work for us in various ways. To say what
Mhm.
I know nothing about being in the Air Force, even though I was in it. And being an artist, they didn't know what to do with me.
Mhm.
I did a lot of drawings of my friends and also my officers. And the island was had these wonderful soldiers that left, that we took over to, who were very clever with their hands. They built
Mhm.
washing machines out of parts of vehicles that worked very well. And they left a PX that I was assigned to. And they went off and we came in.
Mhm.
We just knew them very slightly. They were very reserved, actually. Anyway,
Mhm.
go ahead.
What did you do before the war? What was for a living?
I was an art student in art school in Boston,
Mhm.
and I got special dispensations not to go, and finally I ran out of those and I was drafted.
Mhm. How old were you when you were drafted?
I was about 18 or 19.
Mhm.
I vested 2 years, I would say, 44 to 46. And most of the time that I was away was on these islands, these couple of islands that I was involved in.
What did you expect the military to be like?
Well, all I knew about it was what I saw in movies. And it was somewhat like it, but it was mostly like going to camp,
Mhm.
except it was deadly. I mean, we were taught to kill, which we didn't do it very enthusiastically because we were not going to go to war. We were just there. And that was a strange way to be, because it was more like going to camp
Mhm.
or going on a holiday.
Okay. Were you issued any weapons? while you were there?
Well, you had to shoot machine guns. You had to crawl under live machine gun bullets, you know, on your elbows, underneath barbed wire. Everybody kept, you could hear them, keep your butt down. If your butt is up too high, you're going to get shot. So we did do some serious training, but not too serious because we knew that we were going to fight.
Was it hard being so far from home?
Strangely enough, I did not get homesick, and I've never gotten homesick anywhere where I had to stay away from home. I got a little bit antsy. I mean, that may be called homesickness. I don't know. But I know that we and all the other guys couldn't wait for the mail to be delivered to us. I mean, it's a big event.
Although you did not see direct combat, did you ever encounter any Japanese soldiers as prisoners of war?
Yes, as prisoners of war. I was assigned to the defunct PX. There's nobody to run the PX, and I was elected. And of course, I knew nothing about it. And I guess I was the worst director of that PX they ever had, because they had a fund that they had built up, and I used it all up in about a week doing what I don't know. But they had issued me a revolver, and I carried that around because I had prisoners that I were responsible for, and I got along pretty well with them. They couldn't speak any English. I couldn't speak any Japanese. I think there were about 3 or 4 of them that worked in PX with me. And the PX is somebody. Is Phyllis gone?
Oh, I'll get that. Okay. It's all right.
She got it?
Yeah, I can cut that from the recording.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Well, I was just telling you.
Talking about how you worked at the PX.
Yeah, I worked at the PX.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned I got a catalog, official Army catalog of purchasing anything that I'd want for the PX or for anything. I mean, you name it. And there was a section in there on supplying art supplies to the creation of an art school of some sort. So I ordered a huge amount of supplies, art supplies, drawing boards, brushes, paints, sketch pads. I made ordered enough that I could start a class, which I did. I started an art class, an evening class of still life painting and figure drawing. This tremendous box was delivered to, as big as this room, which had all the material that I had ordered. And that went along pretty well, and it did get me into a little bit of a problem. I was asked to organize some art exhibits of the students' work. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And there was another field called Harmon Field nearby. And I had learned how to drive by then. So requisitioned a weapons carrier, but I forgot to sign it in or out, and I was driving it illegally. I didn't know it, but I was. So after I had an assistant. And he was sitting next to me in the car. A group of the work of students and some of my own work, and I requisitioned a weapons carrier. It's a small, very small army, a little bigger than a Jeep. It had seats in the back and one next to the driver. And my assistant came with me. He assisted in the art class. I don't know what he did, but he was on. And I hung the exhibit, and we climbed back into the weapons carrier with the assistant next to me, and I'm driving. And as I'm driving it's a highway, just like a highway here. And I saw what to me was an airplane on the street ahead, coming towards me. I said, "What is it, a plane doing on the highway?" And as I approached it, there were several people on the fuselage waving at me, saying, "Get off," and I realized that there were no wings on the plane. They had been folded up like this thing. But the ailerons in the back, which are out like this, were not. So I waved back and then past the body of the plane, which was on a big truck. I saw the ailerons in the back approaching me, and I ducked down, and the guy next to me, he ducked down, and the tip of the plane went right through the windshield, and cut it off, and bits of it were floating around the back. Of course, I got a little injury in my shoulder where it brushed against it. Otherwise, I was okay. I pulled over. My assistant, there were two guys in the back that I picked up or something awry. They ran off, and he ran off, the one that was sitting next to me. And I don't know how they got back to the camp, but they did. And so I pulled over, and the police came over to me, and they had a long line of men in trucks and jeeps were stopped by the police, and they said, "Get in line." So now the back of my weapons carrier is completely demolished because it cut through. I ducked just in time, and the guy next to me was terrified. And it cut off the whole back of the truck, which was just flapping along in the back. They never said a word about it. Just said, "Get in line." So I pulled the truck over and got in line. My shoulder, my shirt was all torn and blood. Not a word about that. And they said, they said, "Follow us." And I followed this long train of, we were all arrested. And we were going to the stockade. So when I got there, hey, no, the guy that was sitting next to me, my assistant, he was there, still there, the one who went ducked under. He didn't run off, he stayed. So I said to him when we stopped in the camp, I said, I'm waiting for orders of what to do, what they were going to do to me. I said, you go back and tell my commander, as a captain, what happened. And he said, okay. So he went on and he hitchhiked because my commander showed up.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I had to surrender my belt and my shoelaces. All of these, you know why?
No.
So I won't kill myself.
Oh.
That's done even today in police work, because I've heard other people say the same thing about
Mm-hmm.
when they're arrested. So they took me to a building that had several cells in it, and put me in a cell. And I said, I hope you'll give me one with a window. And they said, yeah, we will. You know, they're not going to. They do it to guys like me. So I got in there, and I got angry with them. Why should I get angry? But I did. I got a cell with no window. So I said, I'm not eating. I'm on a hunger strike. They said, okay. So I got on my bunk and I fell asleep. A couple of hours later, I was awakened by my captain. He had arrived. He says, "You could just follow me." He opened the doors on the jail, and I went out to the truck. And my truck is still there with all the debris hanging out the back of it. Not a word. He says, "Follow me back." Oh no, I know. I sat with him. Somebody else drove it back, because I never saw that truck again. When we got back to camp, it's only a couple of miles, he says, "I want to see you." And he got out, come to the office, and I went to the office, sat down. He said, "I got to give you a punishment." So who knew what that was going to be? He said, "What you have to do for a week or 2 weeks, I forget what it was. Right after supper, you're to go into this Quonset hut and paint it." And of course I said, fine, I'll do it. So I did go. What I had to do was to sign in and sign out by somebody that was soldier that was assigned that. So I signed in. And then I saw it was a friend of mine. So I signed out at the same time. And I went to the movies instead of doing any painting. So I got little jail time. Not that bad. I have another story.
You do?
Yeah.
We'll get to that, but first I would like to ask you, did you ever know anyone who was in combat? Because you yourself
Yeah, no, they all. I knew the men that we replaced that slightly. They were gone. Like when we came, they went the next day. I'm sure I met, the older soldiers must have seen some combat, but I never discussed it with any of them. You know, I saw no signs of war aside from their uniform. We wore uniforms, but
So
that's about it.
It wasn't really a big part while you were there. You didn't really.
Yeah, the war was over. Nobody even wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. How long were you in the military?
2 years,
Only 2.
44 to 46.
Mm-hmm. Were you ever like close to being in any battles? Like Okinawa was towards the end of the war.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
No way at all. We had no inkling about what was happening in the war, except it was all, that's all we knew, all we cared. And though it would be nice to be able to tell you a lot of interesting stories, there's one story that's kind of, this lieutenant who did his portrait, and a drawing, and he said, would I like to go up in a plane?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I would. I'd never been in an airplane. So we'll come to this place at dawn, before dawn, and I'll meet you there, he said. Mm-hmm. So I did. And there was another guy there too, waiting to go on. He had a parachute, and they handed me one too, but I never saw a parachute before. Mm-hmm. So it was dark, and we got onto this plane, B-52 I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it took off. There were no seats. Yeah, I had to sit on the floor because there was no, this is not a passenger plane. It had a large opening between the front and the back, and you could walk around on a little edge if you wanted to go up to the cockpit or where they were flying the plane, to the back where we were. And I saw, and there was it actually was a bomb bay.
Yeah.
The bombs would be in this spot. See, so over the loudspeaker said my name. Come to the front of the plane. So I did. I crawled along this narrow ledge over the hole in the plane. And there were 2 pilots sitting side by side at the nose of the plane. And they were both reading comic books. That was the big thing there, comic books. And I said to him, who's flying the plane? And they laughed and they said, Joe. And I said, who's that, Joe? And Joe was a box between them. And it flew the plane.
The autopilot?
Autopilot. So he said, I said, where do you want me to go? There was no place to sit. They were sitting in the seats flying the plane. He just said, get in the front. And I crawled in the front. And in the nose of the plane, which was like glass, plastic, there was a little bench there. So I sat on that. I could look around. I could look straight down. I could look all around. It was very, I liked it. And they said, well, we're going to show you what this plane can do. So all of a sudden, the earth started to go up the ground. It would go up like this, and then down, and the other side would go up and down. So they were doing sort of circles in the sky. And I thought, this is great. I mean, this is where you can see everything. And then after about a half an hour, he said, we're going to go back. So we turned around, still sitting in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And through the clouds, I could see the airport, the field where we're going to land.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hear them doing something. Something was upsetting the two guys that were flying the plane. And they were swearing, and they said, well, we can't get this right, that kind of thing. Oh my God, I didn't dare ask them what was happening, because we kept doing all of this stuff anyway. And they didn't explain why they were upset,
Mm-hmm.
but I had an inkling, because as we started to come into land, ambulances started coming out of the hangars. I could see these little ambulances with crosses on the top, heading out to where we were going to land. And the plane came down, and I thought, this is the end. And we started bouncing like this, not smooth going in. And they were surrounded by ambulances, and the plane stopped, and I got out, and nobody said anything to me. And I went, somehow I got back to camp, and that was over. I mean, my trip on the plane was, I guess, in jeopardy at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I survived.
Did you ever find out what was wrong with the plane?
No, I didn't have that kind of friendship. I mean, I couldn't ask her what happened even.
Oh.
I just couldn't do it. I was just glad to get away,
Mm-hmm.
But it was pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
But finally, here was an Air Force person flying in a plane.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the United States should have entered World War II after Pearl Harbor?
I don't know. If you ask me a question like that, I have to think back to when I was 18, 19 years old, what my feelings were about world affairs, and I had none.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to get in and out of the army alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, it was like a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was lucky that the war ended when it did.
The Philippines were a lot different than the climate here, and there are many different types of diseases and new things. Did you ever experience?
No, but I did have. They have a lot of hurricanes,
Mm-hmm.
typhoons there, and I experienced one when I was in the Philippines. And they didn't tell us anything. They just said, we're all moving out right now.
Mm-hmm.
I said, why are we moving out? Well, because of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
I said, there's no storm. He said, there's going to be. So we all marched out, and we started in a marching phase. And we marched up into the hills, overlooking the airport, way up. And then we were told to lie down on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And the wind came up and didn't bother us. I mean, I had no experience except seeing it. There was no great wind experience. Nothing. We all lay down in the grass, and then we walked back to the camp. but it was a big storm.
Mm-hmm. Before they dropped the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were planning to invade Japan. Do you think you were going to be part of that?
I think now, I didn't know at the time. As a soldier, you just go where they tell you,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't explain anything to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I would have loved to have gone to Japan, but who knew what Japan was like in the war years? Who knew? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
No, I had no feelings about all I liked where I was living. I had no dangerous things happen to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that dropping the nuclear weapons on Japan was the best solution to end the war?
I don't know. And the question still is discussed. The reason for it was to shorten the war,
Mm-hmm.
and it did that immediately. When those two islands were bombed, and the horrible experience of the nuclear bomb is like unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
These buildings will just vanish.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be looking at all gone, vaporized.
Mm-hmm.
And the poor Japanese public got the brunt of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have great doubts that it was worth it. But they say that it was, that, I don't know, 100,000 people killed in this. It would have been much more if we had continued the war. That's what the explanation was to us.
Mm-hmm.
But, the general public was just a sigh of relief that we have no more war. And what it cost Japan was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether it was worth it or not. The war ended, the German war ended,
Mm-hmm.
and now it was great sailing weather ahead. But I don't know. I don't think so. I couldn't say whether it was worth it. I don't think so. Whenever anybody is killed in that way, there's really no justification for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that, even today when Obama goes to a country that had this experience, he's constantly apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you can do now, is apologize. The Japanese rebounded greatly, amazingly. In the next 10 years, the place has recovered, not only recovered, become one of the most successful as a democracy in every way. It's a blemish on our history, and then we have a lot of them. Starting with the Indians in this country. We have a terrible record of what we did to the Indians. Terrible. And this is what history is all about. There's good stuff, but a lot of bad.
Do you think that war is necessary to resolve conflicts?
I would like to say no, they're not necessary. But when you get to debating about the reasons, they don't make sense either way, on either side. It's just a terrible a terrible thing that people do to each other for questionable reasons, I think. I don't feel, I'm just happy that I was able to have this experience. It certainly was not one that I'm proud of, because I didn't fight, I didn't kill anybody, and I didn't just miss being killed. But the war, if you study it, it's horrible and makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. How did your perspective of the world change because of the war?
Because of the war?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking now about my years as a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
That was only 2 years, and I really can't say that I was a soldier in that respect, that you would imagine a soldier going off to fight for his country. I don't know. These are all questions that are up in the air. They're being answered as we talk.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no opinion on that. All I know is that we're having a new change of government, with Trump, no doubt, being the successor, which fills me with great fear, because he represents a mentality that's completely alien to a human being. I mean, with the things that he's called people, and his attitude towards women and towards anything that he's involved with, it makes no sense. Mm-hmm. And if he gets in and becomes president, I'm afraid to say that I think he's going to be, because he's going to have Hillary, whom I think is an excellent person with the experience that she's had. Mm-hmm. There's something about her that bothers me, and her campaign. Mm-hmm. And I feared for our safety the same way I do if we have Trump. Mm-hmm. But Trump is like no other man that has become president. So I don't know. I feel very bad about the thought that we might have him as a president. Mm-hmm. But we've had worse. We've had Nixon. It was pretty bad, and we lived through it, and we'll get through it. Even if he becomes president, he can't become a complete king, mm-hmm. or an emperor, but he'll get pretty close to it. Mm-hmm. And I fear with this man and his attitude is fearsome. Run the other way. I leave you with that thought.
Well, it's been really good talking to you. I think that just about wraps it up.
I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know. I can't say it's enjoyable, but my life as a private in the Air Force was good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
No, thank you.